Hello, BookTube, and welcome back to Dune in June, a BookTube event created to read Frank Herbert's masterpiece Dune in the month of June. The book is very conveniently set up into 4 parts. 3 of them are very long, then there are appendices in the back that are shorter. So if you're doing Dune in June, you will already be finished with this book, maybe for the first time. I'm hearing some emails from people who've read this for the first time, and were blown away by it. That's terrific. Glad to hear it. Also, a lot of people rereading this after a lapse of many years, finding that there's a lot in it they missed. I reread this book frequently. I'm always finding things I missed. And we've seen what this story is. This is the House Atreides has been ordered to the planet Dune. They've been ordered to take it over from House Harkonnen. They know it's a trap. They know that there are all sorts of forces arrayed against them, many of which they don't know. In fact, it's to flesh out some of those sources that the Duke has now adopted a cold demeanor towards his lady, the Lady Jessica, the mother of his heir, Paul Atreides, in the hopes that the people who think that they have orchestrated enmity between the two of them will make themselves more apparent. There is no enmity between them. Jessica doesn't know that, but the Duke loves her and does not distrust her. He is lying about, he's fooling her about his own enmity in order to bring out and make his enemies overconfident. Because he's trying to make a go of it here. He's trying to make Dune, the planet Dune, work and somehow survive this trap. And we have reached now a chapter in this book that is legendary. The last chapter that we read is legendary. This next one may be the most famous chapter in this book. And you think, okay, a 700-page science fiction epic with lasers and shields and swords and giant worms, surely this will be a corker of a scene like the last one was. No, this is a dinner party. The scene that we're talking about now is a dinner party. There's a dinner party in the Ducal Palace in Arrakeen, hosted by the Duke and by Lady Jessica, attended by Paul Atreides, and a whole bunch of characters, a whole bunch of people who attend. There's a water shipper, there's a smuggler, there's a manufacturer of cheap still suits for use in the desert, and their ladies, their entourages and whatnot. It's, in other words, it's a social meal. But it's crucial for Duke Atreides to have such things so that he can get to know these people, and so that his officers can start to mingle with these people on a social level and get to know them, and they can get to know the Atreides. We've already seen from the last chapter that with Kynes, the planetologist assigned to Dune, that only a brief exposure to the Atreides will sometimes win over the loyalty of people, even the people who are dedicated to betraying them. Kynes is going to betray them. He can't help liking them. So the dinners like this are important, and what Frank Herbert does in this chapter, narrating this dinner, that's all it is. This chapter is just that dinner party, is such a bravura feat of storytelling. Dramatic, tense, fast-paced, not at all static, full of info dumping, and yet you never for a minute think that's what it is. That in my time talking about this book and reading it with other people and sharing it with other people, it has almost always been my experience that the people who love this chapter the most are either the writers or the people who are going to be writers. Because it's only when you are, I think it's only when you are a writer or have tried your hand at it that you realize how near impossible it is to do what Herbert does in this storyline, where he is moving his narrative awareness, he's weaving it in and out of the perceptions of a whole bunch of different characters, and giving all kinds of subtle complexity in layer after layer, most of it unspoken. It's, I don't mean to be ungentlemanly here, but when people ask me, I often rail against the fact that the publisher has promoted Brian Herbert's books as just part of the series of Dune. Yeah, there are 35 books in the Dune series, not 6. I've often railed against that and said, no, that's not true. That's not true at all. There's a world of difference between. And when people who come to this series late and think, oh, so where should I start? Should I start with House Atreides by Brian Herbert? I say, no, that's fan fiction. That's not Dune novels. Those people often say, well, what's the difference? I mean, it's the same characters, same planets, same concepts. I say, usually, read this scene. No offense intended to Brian Anderson or to Brian Herbert or Kevin Anderson or anybody else, but they are not capable of writing this scene. That's the difference. And this scene, there are scenes like it all throughout Frank Herbert's Dune books, but this is the first taste, really, that we get of it. And it's amazing. You are caught up completely in the forces within forces and the feints within feints. Who are these people? And how much are they in league with each other? And what does the Lady Jessica want of them? What does the Duke want of them? What even does Paul want of them? And what do they want of each other? The Lady Jessica has invited a smuggler to the meal, a known smuggler. Why? Well, because when the Duke asked her that question, he didn't know a smuggler was going to be there. She says, well, that's the exact question everyone else will be asking, and that's useful. It'll set people off their rhythm. It might reveal things to us. But she also has a hidden motive, which is that he can be bribed. And if things go badly for us on this planet, he has ships. He could get us out of here if a trap is sprung and we can't do anything about it. The Duke doesn't know anything about that. He doesn't know that's in her mind. And there are all sorts of complexities like that here. It's difficult to do it justice when you're summarizing it because it's... because it does not insult the intelligence of the reader. And I don't mean to be ungentlemanly, but when you read a scene like the last one, where Sandworm attacks the Spice Crawler and the Duke saves the men, and then you read a scene like this one, which is a dinner party, and the ordinary banal conversation of a dinner party, and all the turbulent currents running underneath it, you can get really spoiled really quickly on a lot of other science fiction. When you read these two scenes back to back, you start to realize how little most science fiction respects the intelligence of the reader. I hate to say it, because a lot of those science fiction authors I, in my own way, like, but this scene, it doesn't move at all. It's just a dinner party, but boy, oh boy, does it further the action. By the time the scene is over, you understand a lot more of the complexities of what's going on here. Whether it's going to help you or not, you know a lot more about what's going on. And the scene comes close to violence. We learn a little bit more about Kynes, the planetologist. He is an extremely dangerous man. Most of the people at the table, Jessica realizes, are terrified of him. And we don't know why. Is it because he's deep in the councils of whatever plan is unfolding in the background? Or is it because he's known to be Fremen and could kill someone? Jessica remarks in this chapter that he has the attitude of a casual killer. Someone who, if you offend him and you aren't willing to make amends, he'll simply kill you. He won't agonize over it. Maybe everyone else at the table knows the same thing. It's fascinating. It's a little bit... I always have a twinge of annoyance when I start the chapter. At the beginning of the chapter, in this book set on a desert world that is inhabited by giant worms, at the beginning of this chapter, I don't know, may have been read by an impressionable young man before he became a movie director. At the beginning of this chapter, set on a desert planet inhabited by giant worms, one of the characters says, "I have a bad feeling about this." Sure, it's just a coincidence. But that's it. That's all that this chapter is. It's incredible. And early readers of Dune knew it. Even though far more shot and pith happens in other chapters, this is an incredible bit of storytelling. A masterclass, really, in how to do it. To the extent that, long before the internet and long before anyone thought this was ever going to be adapted to a movie, Frank Herbert recorded himself reading this scene. Once upon a time, you used to be able to get that recording. Probably the audio of it has been lifted and put digitally online. But once upon a time, you got a little cassette with various bits and bobs of Dune stuff on one side, and then I'm going to be shocking you young people here. You ran out of side A on the cassette, you would stop the machine, take the cassette out, turn it around, and put it back in so you could play side B. And I treasured that thing. I played that a million times on runs. I played that a million times because Frank Herbert also knew that this was an incredible chapter. This is exactly the sort of thing that snobs and enemies of science fiction believe science fiction cannot do. And that is it. There's no way for me to summarize this chapter. There is a dinner party at which the Duke is carefully listening until he's called away. Jessica is carefully listening to the balance and the interplay of hidden politics here. And Paul is also carefully listening to everything that's going on. Will it help them? Will the knowledge help them? We'll move on to the next chapter and see. There aren't too many chapters left until we find out. whether or not the Harkonnen trap is successful. So, since I seem to have backed into a chapter-by-chapter read-along of Dune, we will just keep going. We'll read the next chapter next time. Well, Dune fans, I'm not telling you anything you don't already know. And people who are new to Dune, stick around to this chapter, and I think you'll be hooked for the rest of the book, if you're not already. But anyway, I'll wrap this up for now, but I'll be back. Thank you, BookTube.